I'd like to welcome you to Nick's World. It's a world that I've made on my own. Welcome to all of you to Nick's World, a world with a big nostalgic tone. Come along with me as we go forward to the past. If you find showbiz grand, let me take you by the hand. And come along with me to Nick's World, a place where there's no RSVP. Just come in as you are, it's showbiz caviar. In Nick's World, in Nick's World, in Nick's World, that's where I like to be. La da 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 do la da da, la da da do da 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 do da down, da da down, da 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 do down, la da do, la da do da da dan 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 dan. Come along with me as we go forward to the past. If you find showbiz grand, let me take you by the hand. And come along with me to Nick's World, a place where there's no RSVP. Just come in as you are, it's showbiz caviar in Nick's World. But who is he? Nick's World on my TV? Nick's World, a place I like to be. Nick's World.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the premiere episode of Nick's World. I'm Nick, and this is my world, and I'm not kidding. After 20 years in Los Angeles, I moved back home. My dad passed away a couple of months ago, and my mom's about to turn 90, so I've come to take care of her. I'm trying to be a good son. And it's not so bad. I mean, I'm right on the ocean. Our backyard is the Atlantic Ocean, and I've lost more lawnmowers, let me tell you. Anyway, this is a very loose production. I'm going to be like Harvey Weinstein and just kind of feel my way through it. And I hope you enjoy what I have to offer. I'm very excited because our first guest I'll be interviewing is Joe Adamson, the great author, film historian, and filmmaker. He'll talk about his projects. We'll talk about them together, and you'll get an idea of what Joe is all about. We've been friends for about 15 years now, and it's quite exciting for me because as a kid, when I was reading his books, he was my hero. He was my writing hero, and I consider him sort of a mentor. I'm writing my own books now, and I thank Joe for that inspiration. Anyway, we'll get around to Joe soon. Cousin Mervyn, you like Joe Adamson, right?
Oh yeah, I love his pies.
Pies? What do you mean, pies?
Oh, sorry. I thought you said Marie Callender.
Oh, well, I can understand that. That's my cousin Marvin. He'll be around every so often. Don't worry. Did I say Marvin? I meant Mervyn. Sorry, Mervyn.
Oh, that's all right, Dave.
Wise guy. Anyway, I would like to introduce myself and explain to you who I am. I have been in show business for quite a while. I had my first paid gig when I was 15 years old, and that was, over 20 years ago, at least. And since then, I've become part of a 1930s comedy team. This is the DVD, The Misadventures of Biffle and Schuster. I'm Biffle. We are a 1930s comedy team. And Michael Schlesinger, the producer, writer, director, actually put these movies together, and they are just like two reelers from the 1930s. If you love the old comedy teams or the old short subjects, this is for you. The Misadventures of Biffle and Schuster. A lot of extras, too. Funny extras. Lots of outtakes. Anyway, what else can I tell you about myself? I've been on Broadway. I was in Tommy Tune's revival of Grease as your main brain, Vince Fontaine. I was also with the producers for about 5 years. I was Mel Brooks's boy. I had done the Broadway production, 2 national tours, Tokyo, Japan, and Las Vegas. Not to mention regional productions, in Los Angeles and other places. I've played every role, that's for sure, everything but Ula. And let's see, I've done movies, television, commercials. I've recorded over 200 audiobooks. I've been around the block. And now I'm doing Nick's World. I'm a film historian as well. That's my real passion, is show business history, basically, not just film. I teach courses in this, and at the end of the show, I'll show you my website address. You can go there and you could see what I'm all about, and you could even take my comedy course, my film comedy course. Anyway, let's get on with the show. I'd like to introduce somebody. Oh boy, it's time for the big interview. And I told you I'm talking to my favorite author, the great Joe Adamson. Let's tune in now and hear what he has to say. Joe?
I just want to introduce my friend here, Joe Adamson. I have to tell you, Joe, a lot of people are excited that you're my first guest, that you're actually allowing me to interview you, so to speak. Although I did tell you I almost wanted to be like, Joe and I are famous for being very loud in restaurants, laughing through serious films at Cinecon, and other things of that ilk.
Once at a restaurant, Nick was making so many puns, it was causing physical pain. And one of the waitresses said, "Is everything okay? Can I help you in any way?" And I said, "Can you make him stop punning?"
That was her tip. So, she But anyway, I'm very happy to have you here, and thank you for, letting this happen. I haven't seen you in person since May of last year, the end of May last year, before I moved away.
Much too long.
Yeah, much, much too long. But I wanted to ask you, everybody knows about Groucho, Harpo, Chico, and sometimes Manfred.
Not everybody.
Not everybody.
Well, not everybody.
Well, not everybody.
But
that's I would say that's your main claim to fame. Although I would have to add Marx Brothers in a Nutshell, W.C. Fields Straight Up, your Tex Avery book. I received your Bugs Bunny book. My first marriage. That was one of my gifts. Was your Bugs Bunny book, which you've since autographed for me. But Joe and I have been friends from 2006, I believe it was. We met at the, was it the Billy Wilder Theater? We were both at a screening, and I approached you, and we posed for pictures,
I thought it was the Barn.
Might have been the Barn. Might have been the Barn.
I talked to you in a bunch of people first.
Uh-huh.
And then I saw you a second time, and you finally said, "Look, you know me."
Yes. Well, I'm very excited because it's you're my favorite author. I'm sorry to the other authors that I am friendly with, but Joe is my number one. And you showed me through your writing, and you showed a lot of us, that you can have a voice and a sense of humor when you're talking about film history. It wasn't all, Richard Schickel, Clark Gable came from the oil fields of Canton, Ohio. You could have you could have a almost whimsical style when discussing this stuff without stepping on the toes of the people you're writing about. Now, I don't think I can explain it any better than that. And I have taken that to heart and applied it to my own writing now.
I'm just writing now. I'm writing a preface for my new book.
Tell us about that.
Trying to explain, well, my new book is simply taking my oral history with Dick Humer, which I did in 1968 and 1969. So it's over 50 years ago,
Wow.
old now.
Yeah.
And editing it correctly. It was never really edited correctly. It was just kind of patched together, and I had to get it out of the way because I had to finish this other book that you're talking about, Groucho Harpo Chico.
Mm-hmm.
And
Chico.
and Chico. And sometimes Chico.
Yeah.
And that was my big, that was the big deal. So I'm now editing it, I think, correctly, totally restructuring it so that you can read it from beginning to end. I tried reading the prior version from beginning to end and wanted to throw it against the wall because they kept jumping around in time in a frustrating way. And I felt it was like watching all the shots in a movie in the order in which they were shot rather than the order in which they were supposed to go.
Rather than the proper sequence. Yeah.
And yeah, well, I mean, that would be an interesting exercise to take a film like Star Trek 4 and show exactly the order in which things were done in,
Right.
and get a sense of how it goes. Because some of the San Francisco stuff was shot in LA, and a lot of it was shot actually in San Francisco, and some of it was shot in San Diego. The San Francisco scene was shot in San Diego. In fact, it's one of the scenes in San Francisco where they actually say where it is. They say it's across the bay in Alameda. They're very clear. That's where the nuclear vessel is. It's across the bay in Alameda. But all that stuff was actually shot in San Diego.
I'll be Alameda in a taxi, honey. You better be ready. No.
And that was shot very early.
They called her frivolous Sal, a peculiar sort of a gal, with a heart that was mellow and all-round good fellow was my old pal. Trouble, sorrow, and care she was willing to share. A wise sort of devil, but dead on the level was my gal Sal. Trouble, sorrow, and care she was willing to share. A wise sort of devil, but dead on the level was my gal Sal.
Anyway, that's what it was like to try and read it. I just restructured the whole thing, and I double checked a lot of his facts, a lot of Dick Humer's facts. And he was actually there at Disney. He was animating from 1916 on up until 33 when he joined the Disney studio. He retired after I did the oral history. He was doing he was writing the Disney True Life Adventure comic strip when I talked to him. And that was like 2 days a week. So he was in semi-retirement.
Right.
And he had time to sit with me and talk about what he'd done.
Yeah.
And he covers a lot of this stuff, but he was actually there when this stuff was done, and he explains how some of the things actually happened.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. That's when I first learned that the way Fantasia was made was they made the Sorcerer's Apprentice scene with Mickey Mouse and had it completely finished in color, animated, music, scored, everything. It was all done. And they said, wait, we're never going to make any money on this. Well, that's not what Dick Humer said, but it turns out that was the reason. They realized it was never going to make any money as a special cartoon. It was going to be put out as a special.
Mm-hmm.
but we're never going to make our money back on this. So they expanded it into a feature. But I
Right.
mean,
Wow.
nobody knew that at that
Uh-huh.
time, except people like Dick Humer and Ward Kimball, who were actually there.
They were the ones. Yeah.
And you know, he put that down. Anyway, you can read this oral history in the old version. It's online. It's easy to read. So I'm writing a
Mhm.
preface to it, kind of saying how the oral history came to be and what I was trying to do in the Marx Brothers book. And we did a series of oral histories because my professor wanted to do that. And he came and said, I want you to think of some subject you want to research besides the Marx Brothers. Well, I had seen Tex Avery's cartoon, Little Rural Riding Hood. And I saw it at the age of 16, and I knew the title,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew this was brilliant. You know what I mean? I knew
Oh,
enough.
yeah. Yeah.
I was in high school when I saw it, and I had this memory all through this. I was now a graduate student in film, and he said, think of another topic. And what I really wanted to explore was animated cartoons. I didn't know Tex Avery's name.
Ah.
You know what I mean? And didn't know that that was one of many great cartoons made by Tex Avery, many of which I'd seen.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know the name. I just kind of knew that there were great cartoons out there.
Yeah.
And so it all took off from there. But I was explaining what I was trying to do in the Marx Brothers book. And I was influenced by people like Pauline Kael, who wrote about
Mhm.
film, but also
Right.
H.L. Mencken,
Wow.
and historian named Trevelyan. I think his name was George, or wrote under the name of G.M. Trevelyan. And
Don't
he did
tell
not
me.
write, he did not, his stuff was not funny at all, but he dramatized what he was talking about. And I
Uh-huh.
read his coverage of the Battle of Trenton in the Revolutionary War, which is where Washington crossed the Delaware.
Delaware. Mm-hmm.
I did a paper on it, but I mean, his version was
You
exciting.
know, originally he tried to cross the Delaware the long way, but it took way too long. So they decided to just go across. Not many people know that. I'm sorry, Joe. This is
What's
like our
the
life.
long way? The long way is waiting for the bridge to be completed. The Tacony-Palmyra Bridge was not completed for a couple of centuries
I,
after.
I understand George Washington had a wooden bridge. So anyway,
And it was
I,
no help at all.
I did have a question though, before you get off of Dick Humer and Disney and Fantasia. How truth, or do you know if this is true,
How
that
true.
that Bela Lugosi posed for Night at Bald Mountain, for the devil?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. You know the way he would hire actors to act, do the movement.
Yeah, and based on something called rotoscope, which
Mhm.
I had never heard of. And I had taken courses in animation,
Mhm.
and I had never heard of rotoscope and did not realize the extent to which it was done.
Mhm.
And I interviewed Dick Humer and also Dave Fleischer, who was there at the creation of rotoscope. I think it was mostly Max who actually did. But Dave was there, and they
Mhm.
filmed him and rotoscoped him.
Mhm.
And I just,
Oh, Coco the Clown was Dave Fleischer.
yes.
The rotoscope Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I had seen some of the Out of the Inkwells, but I didn't know this.
Yeah.
The Coco the Clown was Dave Fleischer in a clown suit that he wore in Coney Island.
Mhm.
And he had it sitting around the house. So I said, well, why don't we film you in the clown suit, And
Yeah.
then they would trace it, and that's how they did the thing.
Mhm.
But just in the preface, I just talk about how I was influenced by people like Pauline Kael, H.L. Mencken, and
We all come from somewhere, We all come from our influences.
Somebody was saying, somebody was just recently talking about the book. I said on Facebook in response to this guy, I said, I've done a lot of things since I finished that book. I thought I was done with it in 1970. I hadn't found a publisher for it yet, but that's when I finished the second draft, and that was the draft I filed as my thesis at UCLA. And I'm still hearing about that book.
You kind of feel like it's your Citizen Kane.
I kind of feel it's like, Citizen Kane, or like, Joe Heller and Catch 22. Joe Heller wrote other things besides Catch 22, but nobody remembers them. And Catch 22 was just this enormously successful thing. And it's kind of blasphemous to compare myself to Joe Heller or Orson Welles, but it really did have an impact. And the other things have had impacts too. I mean, Tex Avery was the first book on non-Disney animation that anybody ever did, except for a book that came out of England by Ralph Stevenson called, what was it, The Art of Animation or something like that. But it was very dismissive of Hollywood cartoons and Tex Avery specifically.
Which seems incredible,
But this book was an appreciation and a history, and actually, speaking to Tex Avery, whom the Europeans had been looking for 10 or 20 years. In fact, there is an animation book that runs a picture of Claude Rains as the Invisible Man with his head in bandages. And they caption that this is all we know about Tex Avery because he's the Invisible Man. Nobody can find him.
Wow.
And we tried to find him in 1968 when we were doing the oral history program. We went to the Animation Guild and got 5 names, and one of them was Tex Avery. And we had an address for him. We sent a letter to the address, no response, sent a follow-up letter saying, please, nothing. And I spent a year trying to figure out how to actually find him, and discussing a completely different matter, which was my animation film that I was trying to make with my animation instructor. He said, what else are you doing besides this film? And I said, well, I'm trying to find a guy named Tex Avery. And he just very casually go, oh yeah, he's at Cascade now, isn't he? And I went, what?
What?
And I hadn't, Cascade was a studio, and that's where he was. And I said, well, what's the deal? How do I get in touch with them? He said, you can look it up. And I did, before I knew it.
And there he was, Fred Avery.
I didn't realize, 2 things I didn't realize. One was that William Shull, who was my animation instructor, had animated on some of Tex's cartoons. In fact, he's one of the animators on Bad Luck Blackie, but he's not credited. But I know he did a couple scenes on that.
One of my favorites.
And that's one of my that's one of Tex's great films, I think. But 2 was I didn't realize what a small community animation was, and they all kind of knew where each other was. Know directly. It would get around through the grapevine. Oh yeah, Tex is at Cascade. And he'd been there for a while. So it's like, oh yeah, he's at Cascade, isn't he? Just very casually. I mean, I just about levitated out of my seat when he said, what?
Like a Tex Avery character. I would have been afraid that when I went to shake his hand, he would have put like dynamite down the front of my pants,
He was nothing like that at all.
What was he like, Joe?
He was very laid back. It's funny in that Tex was laid back like a character in a Chuck Jones cartoon. And when you talked to Chuck Jones, he was just very voluble and energetic like a character in a Tex Avery cartoon. So I really found a kind of switchback there. But Tex actually had pretty much forgotten about those cartoons. He just felt that was a previous era.
Lifetime. Yeah.
I think he really felt nobody cared about it. He was really surprised that I came from UCLA. He'd never gone to college, and here I come from UCLA. You got to tell me how you made those films. And he eventually would do gags from the pictures. I was away in the summer of '69, and I came back and I saw him in the fall, and he was talking about what was going on because they had a lot of work. And did not have enough staff to do all the work they did. He said, Joe, we were shorthanded. Which is a gag.
That could have been, that's out of his cartoons.
Yeah, no, but it's a specific gag from...
is that the pun one with the detective?
Symphony and Slang.
Yeah, Symphony and Slang.
Where Cat got your tongue and everything.
Now wait, not to change the subject, but I want to change the subject.
Don't
Um,
don't change the subject.
I,
You know, when I was a kid on NBC television, there used to be a show called The Kraft Music Hall. And I looked forward to it all the time. It had hosts like Milton Berle and Perry Como and people along those lines. And it was always a good show. Sometimes they would do a friar's roast, you know, for people like Johnny Carson and Don Rickles and Jack Benny. So it was kind of like a little paradise for someone like me. But there was a summer replacement series one year. They put on a different show, and I became addicted to it. It was hosted by a British entertainer by the name of Des O'Connor. And Des O'Connor passed away quite recently. And he used to finish every show with this song. And it was the first time I'd heard this song, and it became a favorite of mine. And in tribute to the great Des O'Connor, I'd like to sing the song for you. Here we go. Anytime you're feeling lonely, anytime you're feeling blue, oh, anytime you feel downhearted, that will prove your love for me is true. Oh, anytime you're thinking about me, that's the time I'll be thinking about you. And anytime you say you want me back again, that's the time I'll hurry home to you. Oh, anytime you're feeling lonely, oh, anytime you're feeling blue, oh, anytime you feel downhearted, that will prove your love for me is true. Anytime you're thinking about me, that's the time I'll be thinking about you. And anytime you say you want me back again, that's the time I'll hurry home. Time I'll hurry home. That's the time I'll hurry home to you. Oh, yeah. $998, $999, $1,000. I'll do the rest tomorrow. Hey, it's bedtime, and I want to thank you for dropping by to Nick's World. And I want to thank Joe Adamson especially for a wonderful interview. And we'll have part 2 of that interview in the next episode of Nick's World. So be sure to tune in, okay? Time for bed now. Good night, everybody. Oh, the light.
Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, goodbye, everyone. Goodbye. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye, 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 goodbye. So long.